paste our formula there. And now we want to find term 9. If we want to find term 9, does it make sense that we know that k is 8? The n is the exponent, so it'll be 10 choose k is 8. A is the first number, in this case is just an x, to the 10 minus 8. And b, there's a subtract sign, we include the negative with the b value, because it's plus in the formula. So if there's a minus, we include the minus 2 there. Solving these then are quite easy, because you just have to do each thing. I say simplify each bracket first. So 10 choose 8, you go to your calculator, you're going to get 45. X squared, that'll be x squared. Negative 2 to the 8, first a negative to exponent of 8 is going to be positive. Anybody know their powers of 2? 2 to the 8? 156. And then we go to our calculator, 256 times 45, 11,520 x squared. This is way better than, you see, in this case you would have 11 terms. You could find out all 11, simplify them, and then once you were simplified, go to the 9th one and circle it, and it will be this. But then you solved a whole bunch of extra stuff you didn't need to. So the formula says, how did we take that pattern that we noticed and put it together into a formula? The number out in front was a combination. Then we had each of the other numbers going up by 1 and down by 1 exponents. So this formula just formalized that so that you could figure out things quick. All right, you can circle questions 5 and 11. And then turn to page 750, 751. You've got some blank spaces on there. And we are going to look at questions that are a little bit more difficult that come up in this unit. Because that formula and expanding it completely, once you know the pattern and know how to use the formula, they're really quite straightforward. Yes, it will take some practice and some study. You will not be able to do it if you don't practice from now. Just like go into your test and like, I think I'll figure it out. No. But if you do a little bit of practice and a little bit of study, they're not very hard. Okay? There are some that are a little bit more difficult. And I'll just go through some of the scenarios of questions that are a little bit more difficult. Sometimes they ask you, this isn't super difficult, but a little bit more difficult. They ask you to find the last term. So if you had x cubed minus 3y squared to the 8, which term do they want you to find? Which is the last one? Right? You can't go to your formula and just say k is last, or last minus 1. Which one will be the last one? If this was the example and I said find the last term, does it make sense that you would find term? How many are there? Always one more than the exponent. So you find term 9, which then it's exactly like question 3 after that. You could just plug everything into the formula. Or you could even use the shortcut. What you see that the last one's just going to be the minus 3y squared to the 8. Because of how the last one works. Okay? Sometimes a little bit more difficult than the last term, they're going to ask you to find the middle term. So if I had x squared minus 5y to the 6, which is the middle term? Term 4. Okay, this is a little bit trickier, because often people will just take 6 and cut it in half and say term 3. That's a mistake. Because if it's to the 6, does it make sense that there are 7 terms? And if you write out the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, does it make sense that I group 3 here, group 3, this is the middle one? Does it also make sense they can only ask you a middle term question if there's an odd number of terms? Right, if you only have 2 terms, which is the one in the middle? Oh no. That is a problem. So middle term questions will only happen if there's an odd number of terms. I think the middle term questions are a little bit more difficult than the last term questions. Next level of difficulty is questions that say, find the term containing. So I'll do an example of one of those. Find the term containing an x to the 9 in the expansion of So what this means, first of all, if you did the expansion of this, does it make sense that based on this 9, there are going to be 10 terms? So the long way to go about this one is to completely expand it, find all 10, simplify all 10. Once you're simplified, look at all 10 and circle the one that has x to the 9, and you will get it right.
Don't we just need to find the second term?
Well, that's what we're going to find out. If you found the second term, does it have an x to the 9? The problem is that we don't know which term it is. So in these questions, they're more difficult because we have to find k first. And the way that we go about that is we write out our formula, right? 2k plus 1, n choose k, a to the n minus k. I'm just writing the formula from the formula sheet. And then I'm going to use what I know from this question. What I know from this question is that when I find the term, it's going to have an x to the 9, but it probably has a number in front. I just don't know what that number is. But I do know that it has an x to the 9. I know my n. My n is 9. I just don't know what k is. I know that my a value, the first term is the 3x squared, and that would be to the 9 minus k, but I don't know what k is. And I know that my b is minus 2 over x, and that will be to the exponent of k. And the only hint they told us is it has an x to the 9. So we use a mathematical strategy that says, well, if that's the only hint, that's the only thing I can use. So we're going to use only the exponents. In other words, we are going to ignore the numbers in front, which fancy word for that is coefficients. To find k. So in my formula here, I know there's a number in front. I'm going to ignore that and just think about the x to the 9. On the right-hand side, do you see that you have x's with exponents? You will have x's with the exponents in your numerator here, and over here you'll have x's with the exponents in your denominator. The 9 choose k is going to be a number in the end, so I'm going to ignore it for now. The 3 to whatever this is going to be a number. I'm just going to ignore it for now. And the negative 2 to the k is going to be a number. I'm going to ignore it for now. I'm just going to look at my x's and the exponents. So in my right-hand side here, do you see that you have the x squared, that's to the exponent of 9 minus k? And here I would have an x on the bottom, and it would have an exponent of k if I use my exponent laws. Now I will tell you at this point, there's a lot of students really like to guess and check, because it does not take very long to guess and check. First of all, you're finding terms, okay, in this formula. We already know there's only 10 terms. So k can go from 0 to 9. There's not too many choices for k. So when you're guessing and checking, if you start with guessing with, I think I'll try 152, that is a very bad first guess, because it's impossible. But pick a number between 0 and 9. Anything. Don't think about it. Just pick one. 7. So we're going to start with 7. If you started with 7, can you see that you would have an x to the 7 on the bottom? Right? If k is 7. And up here, 9 minus 7 would be 2. X squared would be x to the 4, which leaves you with an x cubed on the bottom. What do we want? We want x to the 9. You have way too many on the bottom. Should you make k bigger or smaller? What do you think would get you less on the bottom?
Smaller.
Smaller. Okay, so we'll do one more guess and then we'll do it algebraically.
K equals 1.
1. So if we put in k equals 1, can you see that the bottom would be an x to the 1? And on the top, 9 minus 1 would be 8. X squared to the 8 will give us x to the 16, which after simplifying becomes x to the 50. Too much. First we had too few, now we have too much. I'm pretty sure you probably already figured out the mental math for guessing and checking. That k should be, anybody figured it out? 3. Perfect. And if you type in 3, it works out beautifully. Now, sometimes on the exam they say you need to solve it algebraically. In that case, you have to use your exponent laws. We have x to the 9 on this side. You have x to the 18 minus 2k over x to the k. What's the law for dividing? We subtract. You would have x to the 9 equals x to the 18 minus 3k. And then just like in our exponents and logs unit, we go, so, since the bases are the same, does it make sense that your exponent, the 9, has to equal 18 minus 3k? Bring the 3k to this side, the 9 to this side. Divide. And you would get k is 3 that way as well. Okay. Me personally, I find the mental math is not hard. I like to just quickly look at it and plug in some numbers and find it that way. Doesn't take very long. If you want an algebraic way, you can use your exponent laws. Now we spent all that time because we had to find k first. Now it's the same. If k is 3, we would have to find term 4. Because our formula is tk plus 1. So now I can go to my formula. N is still 9, k is 3. There's 3x squared. 9 minus 3, negative 2 over x to the 3. Again, figure out each of these things on their own. 9 choose 3. 84. Do that on your calculator.
Yep.
3 to the power of 6. That's 729. Hope so. And x squared to the 6 will be x to the 12. Negative 2 cubed will be negative 8. And x cubed will be x cubed. So So we do all of those separately first. Now we can put our numbers together. So 84 times 729 times a negative 8 gives us negative 489,888. We will have some big numbers in this unit. Don't be scared if I give you a quiz and you get a number in like the billions. Because normally you would start, like on a math test, you'd be like, all right, I probably did something wrong. Because the first answer was like 50, and the second answer was like 23, and now I got 87,354,862. Do you ever get that where you look at a number and you go, I think I did something wrong. It shouldn't look this bad. Okay, you will get big numbers in this unit. And then do you see that your x to the 12 up top and x to the 3 on the bottom simplifies nicely to that x to the 9, and that's what we wanted, to find the term containing x to the 9. These questions are more difficult because you have to find k first. Then once you find k, the question is the same as example 3 was. After that, it's just plugging things into the formula and finding it. And the last difficult type of question looks like this. This is the most difficult. It is actually identical to the last one that we did, except you have to know what a constant is. In mathematics, what is a constant?
A value that is already defined, that's like already defined, won't change.
Doesn't change. So if it doesn't change, how do you know? Like, if I said, if I write that trinomial, one of those numbers is the constant. Which number is it? The negative 7, because it doesn't have a variable width. So in our expansion questions, if it says find the constant terms, that means there are no x's. Or you can think of it as if there was an x with an exponent, the exponent would have to be 0, because x to the 0 just becomes 1. All the x's have to cancel out.
Okay, so this isn't something that has two, so this isn't going to be a question that is like our previous one that had in the brackets, or I guess the previous one is in the brackets, or yeah, that wouldn't have in the brackets like 3x squared.
It could, watch this. Find the constant term. When you know what, if you ask on a test, because this happens every year, someone puts their hand up and points on their test, what is constant term? I'm like, I can't help you. You could hopefully go home and rewatch the video, because you'll find out in the video that I reminded you that you might forget this. But the constant term, that means all the x's cancel out. So find the constant term in the expansion of. And we're so used to the constant term being the last term, but it doesn't have to be. Let's go to the 12. There we go. So I'm going to say, if you get to that place on the test and you say, I don't know what the constant term, I can say, I can't help you with that. I guess you could expand and simplify and find all 13 terms. And once they're simplified, you look at them and see if one of them makes you think of constant term and circle that one. That would get you partial marks, but I can't tell you what a constant term is on your test when it comes up. So it's going to be something you're going to have to remember. Just like, but it's identical to find the term containing, because you have to find k first. And again, the hint is we know that we'll have no x's. So we actually write x to the 0, because our exponents are the only hint. It's going to be 12, choose k. A is 5x cubed to the 12 minus k, and b is negative 2 over x to the k. we only think about the exponents. Ignore the coefficients. We just think about the x to the 0. That's the only hint we were given. And I chose questions here that are the hardest that you could get. Sometimes they make the questions really easy. I'll give you an example of find the term containing that's much easier after this. So I'll show you, because after I show you the hard ones, then sometimes students overthink the easier ones. So we'll do an easier one after this. The only place that we have exponents, you see that in your numerator, you're going to have x cubed to the 12 minus k. That's going to be in your numerator. And this x is going to have an x to the k in your denominator. Without thinking too quickly, but thinking a little bit, pick a k that you think would be close to canceling everything out.
Use number 3.
You're going to go 3?
Yes.
Okay. So if we use 3, then this will be x cubed to the 12 minus 3 would be 9, right? So that'll be x to the 27. And we will have x to the 3 on the bottom. I don't know. I wouldn't know if you're super close. You're left with 24 x's. We wanted them all to cancel out.
I'll just go 3 squared and say 9.
Oh, 9. Okay. Definitely needs to be bigger to cancel more out. So let's say if we tried 9, you would get x to the 9 on the bottom. 12 minus 9 is 3. And I get x to the 9 to the top. Oh, look at that. They'd all cancel out and you get 1. So I'm not even going to do the algebra one because we already figured out that k has to be 9. Now, which term do we want to find? K is 9. We need to find term 10. Term 10 equals 12. Choose k is 9. A was 5x cubed to the 12 minus 9. And B was negative 2 over x to the 9. Go to your calculator. 12 choose 9. 220. Thank you. 5 cubed, 125. X cubed cubed, x to the 9. Negative 2 to the 9 will be negative because it's an odd number. 512 and x to the 9 on the bottom. So first of all, do you notice that your x to the 9 nicely cancel out? That's what we wanted to have happen. Because we were looking for that constant term. 220 times 125 times negative 512. Negative. Oh my goodness, look at this number. 14 million. A nice, very big number.
14. Oh yeah, 14.
Negative 14 million. So, we can get very big numbers. These ones that say find the term containing are usually the most difficult. And find the constant term even more because you have to remember what a constant term is. I chose the hardest ones. Sometimes the find, here's another example that's easier. Find the term containing x to the 8 in the expansion of 4x squared minus 5y to the 31. Seems like it should be hard because I picked a 31. Again, you have to find k first, but I made this one really easy. I'll show you why in a second. We know that it's going to be something x to the 8. 31, choose k, 4x squared to the k minus, be 31 minus k and negative 5y to the k. What's k? Should be able to just look at this and do a little bit of problem solving mental math and tell me, how do I find out k easily? Well, the only hint is the x to the 8. Do we have to consider this minus 5y? We don't even have to consider the y. It has no x's. The only thing is going to be with that. What number has to be in this purple box to give me an x to the 8? I need, like, in the whole purple box, it's going to be x squared to the
28.
4, right?
So it's 27.
So k has to be 27. See how easy it is to find k in this situation? And then I'm going to go dot, 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 because after that it's going to be easy to, oh, now we have to find term 28, plug everything in, and solve. But this one was a lot easier because there was only one place where there was an x. So I knew that to get an x to the 8, x squared had to be to the 4. So if this purple box has to be a 4, k would have to be 27. Without having to do a whole bunch of extra algebra or anything. I'm just like, k is 27. Yes?
Do we have to find the first term ever?
They could ask you to find the first term, but it's just like first term is easy because it's term 1. There's no like extra thinking you have to do. So they might ask you to find term 1, just like question 3 asked you to find term 9. Those ones are considered the easy ones because you just plug things into your formula, do each thing separately. The ones that are more difficult that we listed here, last term and middle term, because you have to do a little bit of thinking to figure out what number it is, but not a lot of thinking. Finding the term containing or the constant term, those are more involved because you have to find k first, and there was a bit of work to do that. And then it's just the same as all the other questions. All right, and you can also circle question number 9. Subtract.